So my name is Richard Van Camp, or Rick, or Riku sometimes. I work in as a developer in the Volt market side of things, and I'm also the front end competence lead at Volt. Quite new to that role. And well, I'll tell a little bit more about what we're doing here, but I'll first let you introduce yourself.
All right, so my name is Fabiano. I work at the moment as a developer in the retail tooling and catalog team. So that means we work on the tools for retailers which have very specific needs when comparing to restaurants. If you think about like the usage, the kind of menus and everything they need, it's very different. And at Volt, I have worked also. I've been at Volt for 3 years. I have that time in my current position, and then the other half in the live ops team, which develops the tools for support. So all the monitoring stuff we need for like when support needs to intervene something that went wrong into an order. So they have to see where user, courier, restaurant is, contact everyone really quick and deal with that. So that's like was the main thing we did at that time.
I also noticed, Fabiano, that you're one of the guys who's on call sometimes and like giving a summary of all the interesting things that happened at night. How did you end up doing that?
Yeah, exactly. So that's like I do mostly front end, and that's actually my getaway from the front end to learn a little bit more about the infrastructure systems, a little bit of DevOps. So that's been very, very, very interesting, challenging, of course, because it's very different. But also but I love the learning opportunity that comes from that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I also consider myself more of like a full stack guy. And I also don't want to be just in the ghetto of the front end all the time.
Exactly.
And that's quite challenging because it is such a big world in itself. There is so much to do that sometimes it is hard to escape that without a good excuse. But it seems like you found your good excuse.
Yeah, exactly.
The front end ghetto sometimes.
So yeah, I'm on call once a month. So it's enough to keep up with the learning. But also it's not that much that will like shift my focus out of the front end.
For those of us, so let me just kind of outline what I hope we talk about. So I asked you to come and talk about just kind of our everyday front end work. And the reason I wanted to do that is I think it is possible to get somebody to come and talk about like some cool, WASM project they did on the weekend at home. But personally, I find it really interesting and inspiring to hear like the actual problems that people are solving in other projects. It helps me to understand what kind of struggles that others are going through and maybe what solutions that they found. So that was the idea, that we would just talk about some things we've done in our projects recently, or more you have done. So I asked you to pick a couple of topics, and we're going to start with one, and that probably is enough for today. But before we start on that topic, could you just tell briefly what sort of stack you work in? Because not everybody listening to this might know what kind of front end that we have.
Yeah, sure. It's been like I've contributed to perhaps 3 different repositories, and all of them we've been using React and TypeScript. And I think that has been the stack to go with our applications here. I've seen small usages of some server-side rendering, but that's like very specific use case. There was a trial in the past with ReasonML, but didn't fly. So it's been very stable and like working really well, the React and TypeScript.
Yes, we are a React shop, and the one thing that people won't know is that when we first met several years ago in another life, you were just moving from Polymer to React. You were just starting your first React project, and that was kind of cool. You knew all about web components and stuff, which I didn't know much about. So you have made a big transition.
Yeah, exactly. I was remembering that yesterday. So there was this, I think it was 2016 or 17. There was this project, like we used to work in the same consulting company.
Yeah.
And then I was in this project in a very big corporate client. And they had their components, their like web application using Polymer. And Polymer 1 at the time. I think after that, Google released even the 2 and 3, the version 2 and 3. But like it was a new thing. Some people they were excited about that, decided to go with Polymer. But you know, it didn't really fly also. So it was a bit weird, the definition of components in the beginning. I think they improved that in the later versions. But still, React was already growing quite a lot at that time, and Polymer wasn't able to to overtake that. So, but it was interesting. Like I remember this. Like you invited me to this web dev and sausages in Tampere to present about the project. Like yeah. So talking about the experience of working with that, it was interesting.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we were able to move to React.
Yeah, I was in those days, a React evangelist. I think I was still new enough to React to think it was like the answer to all our problems. My views are more nuanced these days, but we'll talk about that another time. So let's talk about this stuff that you've been doing recently and around localization. So maybe we can start off by talking about like, what is the problem space? How do we solve this problem in Wolt more generally? And then we can talk about some of the cool things that you've done recently.
Yeah, the problem, if we would have to define here, what's the problem we're trying to solve? You have an application you have that's released in different countries that use different languages. And you want to give, this nice menu on the top for the user to choose which language they want to see this application in. So, and we solved that. Well, of course, there are two different things to handle: the UI translations and then the data translations. So, data translations is fine. It's usually in the backend. So, keep let's say an item or restaurant's data that needs to be in different languages in the database with the different translations. But in the UI, you have to do that differently, and that's how we handle that using React Intel and Phrase. So this is.
Can I jump in here and then just ask one clarification?
Yeah, sure.
We're dealing with this in my team now. So you're doing the data formatting on the back end. Does that include like number separators?
No. That's we have some utils in the front end to handle that. So number separators, currency rendering, for example, those are in the front end.
Because you need to know the browser settings really in order to do that, right?
Yeah. So that's one of the things you have when you deal with that. You have different sources of the of the locale you're using. So is it going to be the browser's locale? It's going to be in the case of this application, the menu or the merchant's locale. So they can the one the user has actually chosen there from the drop down. So that there are different ways, and we have to be mindful which one you choose when you're displaying information to the user.
So you mentioned Phrase. So what is Phrase? Like we're doing our localizations with Phrase. So what is this tool?
Yeah, it's a tool where you can expose to translators the things you want to translate. So in the code, we have just a big JSON file with the translation keys and then the sentences. It's in a base language, which is English. And then if you want to translate in other languages, you need to expose that to like non-developers. So to the translators. And for them to be able to understand and be able to translate phrase, offers an interface for that. And I mean, not only the interface, but the whole management around that. So you can add screenshots for translators to actually understand where the translation is being used, write some description to give some context, create jobs to, give a little bit more self-contained information for what they are working at the moment. So it's pretty nice in that sense.
And are we talking about human translators? There's no
yes
to this. Okay, so that in that way we get like really high quality translations.
Exactly.
Okay, so let me see if I understood this right. So basically there's sort of an automated process or semi-automated, where when we need to localize, like we have an application, maybe so far we have it in English, now we want to add Finnish, we would need to take a bunch of screenshots, and we would need to make like a request for the localizations, and I guess we would give the keys, and they say like, we need these localized, here's the context, here's some screenshots and some additional meta information. Is that the general idea?
Yeah. The idea is that developers do have a little bit more work on that side to make translators' lives easier. So we do, like, when we merge a PR and then like bringing new translations, we do have to go to phrase, upload the screenshots, actually mark where the keys are so they can actually see in the screen where it belongs to, and write some description for the key, like this translation is shown when user clicks on A because of this and that, and create a job. So the UX copywriter can, like, he goes weekly through those jobs and assign the translators with deadlines. So we can, like, we don't have to, just because otherwise translators would have to open phrase and look for untranslated keys and try to figure out where they are and why they are there. Do they even exist still?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So then I know there's been some friction around like the flow. It's very important within a team that there is like a continuous development happening, and you need to be able to do a PR in good time, get that PR reviewed. And I know that there's been some friction, and that's something you've been like working on. So can you tell more about that?
Yeah. The challenge there is that when someone adds a translation, the UX copywriter needs to know who was the author of that, because like then if there's no screenshots, if the person forgot to add to a job, the UX copywriter has to ping that person and say, hey, could you please add this to job so we can move on with the translations. So to have the developer name associated with the translation, we have to, like, the developer has to push the translation using his own access token created in phrase. So it has to go to phrase, create an access token, and then push the translations there. So this can be a very manual work. One way to do that is that, right after merging a PR, the developer goes, the next second goes there to master and pushes the translations using his token. But that's easy to forget. And then if you forget and, 5 minutes later, a second developer merges a PR and pushes, the developer will push their translations and also the other developer's translations under his name or her names, right? So that's like, it's a process that's very easy to break. The first solution we had for this was to, when you create a PR, before there's a GitHub Actions check to see if those translations have already been added to master or merged to master. And if it's not, the check will fail and you can't merge your PR. For that to pass, before merging, you have to, like, the developer would have to, again, it's a manual process. Go there, push the phrase branch with this new translations, and then merge the phrase branch into the phrase master branch, then the check will pass. Okay. And then the developer can merge the PR. So we actually use that for many months.
What if you forget to do that?
Like the check will still be failing, and you can't merge the PR.
Okay, so you're blocked.
Yeah. The problem with that is like the phrase, like it's not instant. It might not be instant when you push the branch and then you merge the branch in phrase. So it could take up to 10 or 15 minutes. Then you would try to merge. You would get a message like error, unprocessable entity. And you want to merge, you want to release your PR, but you can't because you have to wait for the process to go on. Yeah. And there was an actual bug also that we got in contact with their support to figure out, because for some branches, I don't know what happened in between. They were trying to figure out as well. We couldn't merge at all. So we had actually to remove the check from the PR and ask people, hey, merge this, and please instantly after merging push from master your translations. Right. And we were back to square one, right? So yeah, and of course the problem is also the manual work. Everyone has to do when you have new translations. You have to, well, the GitHub Actions will remember you to do that, but still you have to do that manually. So yeah, this was like bothering a bit people, and we have put some thought in that. And the latest process we have released, it's now a one-time setup that you have to do in the repository. So when a new contributor comes, they will see and open a PR, they will see this message in the PR saying that they should have a valid phrase token set up as a repository secret. Why a repository secret? Because that's visible to GitHub Actions. Right. So we can use that information. But it's a one-time setup. Once they do that, the check will pass. They have a valid repository secret, and we have done in such a way that the repository secret is called phrase _ token _ and GitHub username, because that information is also available in the GitHub Actions. And when they merge the PR, it will look for that secret based on the GitHub username and push the translations with the token, with the user's token, which is already set up as a repository secret. So that's a one-time setup. Of course, when they open the PR, they have to ask someone to like a maintainer to open or actually to add a repository secret. But next time, and that's it, you forget about it. All the PRs from now on, you can just merge and it will push the translations with your name as author.
One thing I'm missing here is how do you know that there's translations in the PR?
Oh yeah, there's a check in the workflow for that. So we check we do a diff in the workflow to see the English JSON against master to see if there is any difference, additions actually specifically.
So the English JSON is sort of like the master one, and
it is.
Something changed in another language, it wouldn't be seen, but so it needs to be changed there first, and then all the other languages are updated.
Exactly.
One problem we have in the project, or we have had, and I think every project I've ever been in, is that because localization for developers is something like, I don't know, it's like flossing your teeth. It's the kind of thing like, it's good for you to take care of it. You should go to the JSON, and if there's something, an unused string, you should remove it and be a good citizen. But you don't. It happens, you're in a hurry and you forget. And so if you don't have like some mechanism in place, your JSON just explodes into, and a big part of it is just unused stuff. Unused keys for localizations that have been removed and changed. So have you had to deal with that problem? Have you had to fix that?
Yes. I forgot to remove translations 1,000 times. So yeah, that's the problem. If you remove a component that had a translation inside, translation is not used anywhere anymore. then the translation will just be sitting there in the JSON file forever, unless you actually go to open the phrase app in the browser and delete the translation from there, or call from the CLI to delete that translation. But like, to be true, no one does that because, well, people forget. It's it's an annoying thing to remember to do after you merge your PR, because like merging the PR, it's you get the feeling that it's done. So let's do the next thing. But then if you have to do something after that, it's kind of hard to remember. So the way we handled that was to write a simple Node script to go through, first check the English JSON, which is the base translation file, flatten the keys, and then look for the keys in the repository, in the files. So it's just like a simple reject search. There is one caveat there, which is the dynamic translations. We in the contribution guidelines, we discourage that at all because we're using dynamic translations. Then it's hard to find. But well, some might make it through. So there's a check for that. So basically, it's checking if the translation component and method from React Tintle is using a template string in place of a key. Then we say, you might have a dynamic translation here. We show an error in the console. Please check. So the script will check that, will list the translations, and then ask you if you want to delete them or not. Then if you do, you will use the phrase CLI just to go through all the translations, delete them, and pull the information so you can actually open a PR and sync everything. First time, like after making this process very round and working well, first time we actually ran the script to delete the translations, we got rid of 400 unused translations. Yeah.
Okay. So the bundle got a little smaller.
Yeah, exactly. So of course, now you have to remember to run the script. But the next step we've been planning here is to create a GitHub action job to run, say, weekly, to remove that and open a PR with the syncing the branch.
Okay. Yeah, we have a pretty similar process. We're just running that script every time you push, basically. So it's just your branch will fail if there's some unused keys, which in my case there often is. And the way that we've solved the problem with the dynamic bits, I don't know, I don't think our solution is the perfect solution either, but we just came up with like a syntax, because we have quite many enum values where, you'd have a list of countries, and you want to iterate over the list of countries and just have the same prefix. So we're using a colon in those cases. And so our script just will skip basically if there's a colon, but of course, that means that there's a leak in our process, which means that if you put a colon, and I'm guilty of this, at least one, that I found that there was a colon that I didn't value a list that I didn't remove from the keys. So it's an imperfect process, but that's what we're doing now.
Yeah, in that case of an enum, for example, in the contribution guidelines, we suggest to create an object. And let's say the keys are the country codes or country names. And then you just create a key, and then the value is the full translation key. So we can actually find that from the script.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes total sense. And so often simple is better, even
yeah,
getting rid of these dynamic keys in terms of concatenating them and stuff probably would reduce bugs as well, because simpler is better in code. Okay, cool. So, and then I know, because I looked at, I'm in a totally different project, but I have peeked recently, and I see that you're still working on this stuff. And in your repo, I saw that you have some new hook related to pluralization, and that kind of piqued my interest. So that's around the same topic of localization, but something a little different. What is going on with that?
Yeah, plural can be a problem. Because we often overlook that. The way usually plurals are defined is using this called ICU format, which uses there are two problems there. One is the placeholder, not placeholder, but the interpolation it uses. It is a bit complex to write, and you have to define, or like when you are developing and writing in English, you define one and other. So let's say you want to pluralize the word item, then you define one, and then you say it's item, and then other, and then you say it's items. The first problem is that, well, the interpolation, the way it looks in phrase, usually it often confuses the translators. So we have found many cases where the final translation string was completely broken because it is hard to understand when you look at that kind of interpolation, because you have kind of brackets inside of brackets.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look very, like, it's not intuitive. And the other problem is that many languages, they don't have only, the same plural rules as English. I think the extreme case I've seen when I was dealing with that was Arabic, even though we don't have the Arabic language in our application. But they have, like I mentioned, one and other. They have a different kind of plural for saying zero, for saying few, which I think it's from 2 to 4. And then for many, which is like from 5 to something else. Okay. So it's like weird. 0, 1, 2. Actually, 2 is different. And wow. Then there's few, many, and others. There are six types. And they are not accounted for. So we do have, for example, Slavic languages. They have plurals that are different than one and other. And they are not accounted for. So when a user goes to the application and tries to read something, it won't probably look as native as it could be. So they will read like a strange plural that will probably look like it was a plain translation from English. So pluralization, like this hook you saw, it's an attempt to deal with that. The way it works, phrase has this possibility of marking a key as a pluralized key. Mm-hmm. So if you have a key and you mark as pluralized, it will break down that into sub keys with this all types of plurals. So 0, 1, few, other. And it will actually give you the correct types of plurals based on the language. Because, there is a standard written for that. So we know like what plurals or what plural types there are for each language. They know it, so they just break down that's into the subkeys. But in the other hand, React Intel doesn't have a component for dealing with that, and we had to write a wrapper, which is the hook you saw. So the wrapper simply takes the information from the Intel object, and based on the number you pass there, which is the number used for counting which type of plural we're going to use, you can find, based on number and language, you can find which plural it is. So if it's 0, 1, few, many, 2, whatever. And then based on that, we know which key to look for in phrase. And then we know which translation to use to show to the user.
Say look for the key in phrase. What do you mean? Does phrase actually have like an API that you're accessing, or?
Yeah, no, sorry. Like to put it better, you look for the translation in the translation files that were pulled from phrase.
Okay.
So when you mark as pluralized and then you pull next time, the keys will just show as like this broken down into these types of plurals, the pluralized ones. So
sounds
then
like
we can find.
JSON. Does it get to be quite verbose if you have all these for each language? Like a lot of kilobytes of JSON.
I don't think it's that much, because otherwise you would have to write kind of a long interpolation. Mm. This is a bit shorter. but well, it will have more bytes because there are more plurals, than if you would be writing only with the other interpolation and be using only one and other types, because then it will actually show all the plurals. Like if you use that for Arabic, it will have, the ICU will still show one another, but then for when you pluralize, it will show the 6 types there.
Yeah.
There are more bytes just because it's correct.
So, I mean, like right away, I know that our app needs to be fixed because we're using just this ICU. So, and by the way, I get like every time I have to do that, one or the other thing, every time I get confused. Like invariably every time, like you render your app and instead of seeing like what you expect to see, you see the whole string. You're like, oh man, I got it wrong again. So yeah, it's not terribly intuitive, but not only that, like it's wrong because of the languages that we're supporting. And now that you say that, like we had Japanese, and I'm kind of wondering like if it looks like Japanese English actually for the plurals, probably.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I think it is confusing. I mentioned for translators, but also for developers, right? As you said, I also get confused when I had to write this ICU messages. So yeah, I think there's going to be a big improvement.
What about right to left? Are you supporting that as well in your app, right to left languages?
We are. And it's actually not very big work. You have to be mindful, I think basically of 2 things: the direction theme. So when you you have to specify somewhere that you're trying to rendering something that's RTL, right to left, instead of LTR, right left to right. So we usually do this in the root level of each route, if I'm not mistaken, and that already shifts the UI of everything that's under that tree. But then there is also the styles that we've been always like forever defining, margins and paddings as margin right, padding right, and and then that will break. So this is something we had to add a style linked check to avoid that. And instead of using margin right or left, we use margin inline start or end. Or even like there's also top and down, it's going to be margin block start or end. You have to shift a little bit fine, but
for me, I always wondered why like you guys are using that all over your app. And I thought, okay, this works, but why are you using the inline? And now I know, okay.
Yeah, because then if it's right to left, the end will be on the left, right?
Okay, cool. Good. Learned something else new too.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else about localization that we want to discuss here?
There is. Yeah, may I?
Yes, please.
Yeah, something also that came to my mind, because when we were talking about having the translations like related to the author name, so the UX copywriter could see where is it coming from, or like who has added that. There's also the fact that like going to phrase, we have not only one project, but we have, I don't know, like a dozen projects in phrase. And then for the UX copywriter, it might be tricky to go through the UI and trying to find the author from there, because you have to enter in the details of the key to find out. I don't know if there's a way to filter by author, but so like they needed some kind of they could use some kind of tool that would make their life easier. And then after discussing with the UX copywriter, I found that we could actually do something about that. And in one of our tools, there is it's a kind of a hidden feature, because like he knows about it. I know about it. There are probably a couple people more that use this, but this is meant for the UX copywriter mostly. Okay. You can go there to this tool, and with your token, there's a very minimalistic UI that talks to the phrase API.
Mhm.
It lists all the projects. Then you can select which projects you want to see the keys from. And then after you select and you hit OK, there's a series of calls there to build you a list of the keys that haven't been that are still unverified and haven't been added to a job.
Ah,
So it's like a 1 minute process to go there, open the app, or even like 30 seconds, and then list the keys. And then it shows just like a simple table with the key, who created that, and how long ago. So they can keep track directly from there.
cool. This sounds like you like to make tools for developers, like to make their lives easier. And I think those are satisfying because those are like things that you really get positive feedback from your colleagues from, like when you make something that just helps them do stuff in an easier way.
Exactly. And if the process is bothering me, I mean, like I could do something, right?
Yeah.
So it's every time I had to open a PR, I'm like, oh my God, I again have to do this branch thing here with the phrase translations, or I have to create again this, horrible placeholder or interpolation for the ICU translation. Like, is there something that could be done about that?
So what's the next friction spot? Do you have something, a pain point that in the back of your head that you're like, I'm going to address that next
Um,
in
I
this?
don't know. I think at this point is the pluralization hook you said. It's been open for several weeks, gone through several rounds of discussions, and it's almost ready to go. And I'm really looking forward to see this in use. But I think it should be smooth because we had many rounds already with that. And the one thing that still needs to be done it's this workflow GitHub Actions job to run the script to remove the unused translations weekly. I'd like to see how this will go, because again, it's something it's happening on the background. You don't care about. You don't need to remember to do anything.
All right. Hey, Fabiano, thanks so much for spending your time to come and like chat. I've never done one of these. Have you ever done a
Me
podcast?
neither.
I have no idea how this is going to be received. Hopefully well. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't know, maybe at some point we can come back. I really wanted to talk also about drag and drop because I know you've done some cool things with that, and I'm also quite interested in drag and drop and some components I've made in the past with that. But it was too much for this talk. I think we've used our time up. So maybe in a future edition, if somebody like this, we'll do the drag and drop one or some other topic.
Yeah, true. That can be a topic of its own.
Yeah.
It can go very complex.
All right. So we'll see you. Have a nice week and a good weekend out on your bike. I know you're a bike rider. And
Yes.
yeah, take care.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for hosting this.
Okay. Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.